Let's talk about the many, many mistakes I made as a beginning teacher. My name is Joel Powell. I'm an orchestra teacher and conductor. I've taught high school, middle school, youth orchestra, 15 years and counting, and I absolutely love what I do. Please be sure to subscribe by clicking below, and also feel free to visit my website at joelpowellconductor.com. I have lots of helpful resources for music educators, and I'm also happy to help, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Classroom management. I think this is a big struggle for a lot of beginning teachers. Being all over the place with our expectations. What is our standard? For me in the beginning, I was way too loose with the kids. I wanted them to like me. I wanted the parents to like me. I was taking over from a really beloved director at the time. It was challenging for me because I wanted those kids to have a great time. And I thought, well, if I'm loose and cool and fun and understanding, they're going to really enjoy it. The reality is anarchy ensued a lot of times. Then the reality is sometimes I've been too exacting and too over the top about my classroom management, almost too strict to the point of no joy, no fun, trying to overcorrect for that looseness I had in my beginning years. And I quickly discovered that also is not ideal. Now, the reality is it's way easier to start kind of tough with the students and very exacting about your standards to really tighten the reins, if you will. And then you can gradually loosen the reins, which is what I learned over time. And I've learned how to have more fun. It's really hard though to go the other way when you're loose and then all of a sudden, no, today's gonna be strict and you guys need to listen and why aren't you doing this or that? I just didn't realize, I'm being all over the place with my classroom management. Once I figured that out and struck the right balance between being exacting about my standards in the classroom and how I expect them to behave and being consistent with my follow through, it made all the difference. Being inconsistent. Now this is kind of a bit of a continuation of classroom management, but it pertains to other areas of being a teacher too. In my case, I was really inconsistent with my expectations in the beginning days. You know, one day it might be okay for them to shout out and kind of talk out in class and have a silly fun time. And then other days I'd say, why are you doing that? And I wouldn't be afraid to necessarily even write someone up. That inconsistency sends total mixed messages to kids, and it took me a while to figure that out. Once I realized I've got to be consistent, here's the procedure and here's how I follow through with that, it changed everything for me. And I just made my consequences really clear, and I made my procedures really clear. And the reality is that made all the difference in my classroom once I was consistent. Negativity around us. Now, I'm a really upbeat, positive guy. I'm idealistic. I'll never change that. And in the beginning of my teaching career, I was especially idealistic, and as I think a lot of teachers are. And I protect that to this day. It's something I'm proud of. I want the kids to feel that light and that positivity and that enthusiasm, not jaded, negative thinking. And fortunately, the people that I always have worked with really closely, my close colleagues in my same department, et cetera, have almost always been really, really positive people. And they've really inspired me for my teaching career. But there have been some times where there have just been tangentially some people that I've known who've been really negative and everything is jaded and has an angry tint. They're almost mad because I was positive. I'm telling you, don't let someone take that away from you, that joy and that positivity. I protect it with all my might, and I'm so grateful that my colleagues are the most positive, compassionate, caring, idealistic people who are willing to dream like I am. Pacing. I oftentimes would bring the rehearsal to almost a screeching halt. I didn't understand that we've got to have a momentum, a mojo going in class that I've got to build and keep moving. I have to sustain that energy and keep it moving forward. But by sometimes saying, okay, I'm going to stop everything and I'm going to fix this string that broke, for instance. I wasn't triaging well and I wasn't keeping that pacing moving forward. What happens when pacing isn't right? Classroom management's all over the place. Kids are going to start acting out. And I didn't understand that. Once I started picking up my pace as a teacher, it made all the difference in the world. Now, it's also true that we don't want to move too fast either. And I've seen that happen with certain teachers. But in my case, it was especially hard for me because I would move too slow sometimes. I struggled to prioritize in the early days. And what I specifically mean is in the classroom as I was teaching, because I didn't have a lot of experience. I didn't anticipate really well what they were going to struggle with. It's hard when you don't know what you don't know. And that was very true for me. And so I spent way too much time bludgeoning certain concepts that really weren't super pivotal and important. Maybe I'm spending a ton of time on music history concepts, which is important, by the way, but almost at a detriment to addressing posture needs in the classroom and trying to remedy some setup issues. I had to learn to prioritize what is most important. I only have X number of minutes. How am I budgeting them? Like money, how am I budgeting my time? And that's true on the podium in the classroom, and it's true when you're in your office trying to work on things that need to get done. What is most important? What is most pressing? I've always been really good at forming and maintaining relationships over the course of my life, but I guess in the early days, I didn't really understand just how deeply pivotal relationships were. Sometimes I would try to approach things from too musical of a perspective. All right, I'm gonna come in with my musical ideas. I'm gonna just bludgeon it to death until those students get it. The reality is the students are gonna buy in if we truly deeply show how important that relationship is with them, if we nurture that and spend the time deeply getting to know them and showing them how much we care, because then they're willing to go to work for us. And I struggled with that in the early days. And finally, it got clear for me toward the end of that first year that I need to spend the time on relationships first, then it's the relevance of the content second, and then finally, it is the rigor that we're going to offer in our classroom. But first priority is always relationships. And I only got better from that point forward at understanding that. I spent a number of my early years trying to teach like someone I wasn't, trying to teach like not my personality. Don't get me wrong, we need to have mentors that we look up to and revere and that we want to be like. We need that example. We need that mentorship. But what I'm talking about is your very core and essence. My essence is fun, silly, intense, and I sort of shied away from some of those things in the beginning days. And I think my students paid the price, unfortunately, for that. To them, I'm sorry. I really only got better from that point forward once I realized that I need to embrace who I am. I want to look up to those mentors and I want to be like them in every musical sense, in every standard sense. But I need to be me at the end of the day. And I need to teach like me, not somebody else. I was too inflexible in my early days, and I mean that in a couple different ways. First of all, I would be too inflexible sometimes with student conflicts. Don't get me wrong, they need to be at concerts that are for grades and rehearsals, etc. And I know that's frustrating. I know that there are times when they just completely blow you off and that's frustrating. So I understand that. However, I would be too hard on kids sometimes about some of the conflicts that happen, especially if it was a sports conflict or a club conflict. I've learned now to really cherish the fact that, oh my gosh, I have the chess club captain, I have the leader of Spanish club, I have athletes like our football kicker who is in our program, quarterbacks, soccer players, baseball players, you name it. I firmly believe that having that type of different personality in our classroom and different skill set in our classroom makes us better. And I was too blind to see that in the early days. And so now maybe I'm too flexible sometimes, but I'd rather be too flexible than not flexible enough. Kids know at the end of the day, I'm not going to put them in a difficult situation between a coach and them having to decide what they're going to do. I'm going to try to work with them and try to be understanding and try to strike a compromise. I've gotten a lot better in that regard. The second way that I was inflexible was sometimes with ways that I wanted things to go. Maybe it was with colleagues. No, I want it to go like this at the concert and I want to have it on this date and me, my way. We all have to realize that we work in a giant sandbox. We have to play nicely, we have to get along, and we have to help others. I got way more flexible as time went on, made me a better teacher, and made my students better. I took it personally when kids quit orchestra. Don't get me wrong, I'm human. It still hurts when a student quits, but I try to approach it with empathy and understanding. I'm a dad now. That's changed a lot for me in my life, giving more perspective of what kids go through. It really is challenging everything that's on their shoulders. And instead of taking it personally, I try to think about their situation. All right, maybe this just wasn't for them. Of course, I'm going to try to encourage them to stick it out, but I always tell them at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you, and I support you, and we'll still be cool no matter what. I really struggled with this in the early days, and I would almost pressure students to stick with it when really they didn't want to. It's interesting, by really loosening the reins in that regard and kind of letting go, my retention, my recruiting through the roof. And by being relaxed and understanding in those situations, while still trying to encourage them to stick it out, game changer. I was scared to death to make parent phone calls. I did not want to pick up the phone and call because I was worried I was going to get yelled at. Has it happened to me a time or two as a teacher? Yes. It's inevitable. If you're in this business, it's going to happen. We're in the business of helping kids and working with them to try to help them, and parents are going to have strong emotions sometimes. But the reality is that I found that by kind of following a little script, it helps so much. Here's how my parent phone calls go, especially when I'm having a challenge with a student. Hello, so-and-so, this is Joel Powell, orchestra teacher. Yeah, I'm just calling because, first of all, I want to tell you I absolutely adore your child. They're doing a great job playing the cello in class. I'm really, really proud of them. And I just wanted to tell you that first and foremost, before we go any further with this conversation. They respond. You've started by saying something positive. I'm wondering if I can get your help with something. We're just having a little bit of a challenge with something in class. Your child's great, nothing personal. Just wondering if I could get your help with something. 99 times out of 100, parents will be really receptive to that type of conversation. If the conversation is judgmental, the opposite is true. And I can tell you because I've experienced that firsthand. And I've experienced it even as a parent having conversations with my kids' teachers. And my kids are great kids, but they're still kids. There's still difficult conversations sometimes that have to be had. If we approach it from a place of empathy and love, the parents are going to be so much more understanding. And I found that certainly to be true in my case as I've gotten older and just not afraid to make that parent phone call. In fact, I make a parent phone call to every beginner student in my program, or if I'm at high school, my freshman students, to say at the beginning of the year before anything can even go wrong, I adore working with your child. They're doing a great job. And I just wanted to tell you what a pleasure it is to have them in class. And parents absolutely freak out when they get a positive phone call. So it's a great thing to do. It builds those kids up. It makes the parents feel great as well. Resist the urge to just send an email out. Emails are okay. Phone calls are best. We need to have that personal touch. And I was scared of it. I've only gotten better at it. Honestly, I was kind of bad at proactive, concise communication. I should have been better about just sending out a newsletter once every couple weeks with some pictures of the kids playing in class, general information about what we're doing. But I was so overwhelmed at the time, I didn't understand how to put all that together. Now, SMORE, S-M-O-R-E, is a really great newsletter. It's free. Email's great too. We can keep it simple. But reaching out with parents so that they constantly have that list of concert dates, rehearsals, so that they're in the know. Now, are they going to get confused sometimes? Sure they are. Let's not be judgmental and hate on them for getting confused and saying, well, the information's right there. They're human. They're going to miss things sometimes because they're trying to parent their kids and trying to work and you name it, do a lot of different things. But I found that by having better proactive communication, it really helped. And by trying to have one positive parent phone call at the beginning of the year, it helped to alleviate a lot of later concern when I did have to have a difficult conversation. I'm embarrassed to say I was bad about deadlines sometimes in the very beginning. I would let certain things go because I was so overwhelmed with something else going on that I just completely dropped the ball. Honestly, I wasn't great about always responding to certain emails in the beginning days, probably because I was overwhelmed. And maybe that's been you at some point in your career too. But we have to make sure that we get back to people, that we take time out of our day, even if it's just 10 minutes and we set a timer just for responding to emails and just for handling deadlines. And for me, maintaining a simple list helped me with deadlines and to make sure that I met those deadlines and that I was being totally professional in that regard. I was not great at asking others for help, especially more seasoned teachers. When I had trouble, I should have gone to those really experienced teachers who've been in the trenches for 30, even 40 years and asked them, hey, when you've struggled with these issues, what's been the solution that you've offered? But I was so insecure and so young, and I just didn't want to admit that I didn't know what I was talking about. And sometimes the best thing that we can do is to admit that we don't know what we're talking about. I do it with my students sometimes. You know what? I don't have the answer on that. Let me get back to you on that. And it's okay. It shows that you're human. And believe me, kids appreciate that too. I realized that I could delegate. I didn't need to do absolutely everything. I could have a parent maybe come in and file for me. Use Sign Up Genius to have different people sign up for different tasks I need done. Maybe it's copying music. I oftentimes have parents come in and assist with that. It's not something I necessarily have to spend a ton of time doing that way, and I can focus on teaching instead. It was really challenging for me in the early days to get to that point of understanding and to go, that's the type of teacher I need to be. School finances. I really didn't understand 100% the flow of the money sometimes. And I really struggled to understand the 75 different funds that we often deal with at schools, and certain just supply money and then ECA money and you name it. It comes from all different types of places. And maybe it's booster money as well. Exactly what the process was, how much the budget was to get to spend, etc. And I really learned to become an Excel guy. I'm really into data, into tracking data and tracking our finances as a program so that I know exactly what we need to spend and how much we have to spend and when it needs to be spent by. And it's something we shouldn't be afraid of. Worrying. I worried constantly, actually to the point of having hives at my first contest experience just from the worry, not from anything I ate, just worry. And it's something I still struggle with a bit to this day, is worrying. But I've learned with time, again, this concept of trusting ourselves is really important, and just going, you know what? I've got growth mindset. I'm going to get better. I want to be better the next day in the classroom. I want to be better the day after that. And trusting yourself to know that, you know what, I don't need to constantly worry. I'm going to do the best I can. And loving yourself enough to go, this is where I am now, but I have growth mindset. I'm only going to get better. Over conducting. As a director, when I was conducting, everything was so marcato. And it was for me being stressed out and trying to get the best out of the kids. And I look back at video of me conducting in those early days and just how bad and over the top the conducting was. It's not how I was taught to conduct, but we get in front of kids and maybe they're not watching, and because we're not making ourselves relevant enough oftentimes, and we suddenly start to freak out and we conduct with this sense of dread instead of, if it's legato, right, smooth, or just nice and light, not over conducting, keeping it nice and down here. And once I learned to relax my conducting, I also learned to relax just my overall vibe and my physicality and being aware of, what do I look like? You know, am I marcato conducting constantly, or am I loose, and am I actually someone that the kids want to watch as a conductor? Honestly, I feel like I didn't smile enough in my early days either. I was so focused sometimes on what I need to do. A simple smile and greeting the kids at the door make all the difference. One of my colleagues was just actually telling me the other day, there's been recent data that suggests that just by standing at the door and greeting your kids, that kids are twice as likely to have much, much more success in the classroom and just be overall so much happier in their day, and they felt like they've been seen and heard and someone actually cares about them. So I've learned to really just be aware of my overall vibe. If I'm stressed, I need to be aware and I need to let that go, and I need to bring about a positive vibe, a positive physicality about what I do. I didn't break things down enough in the early days. In terms of a rehearsal, if there was a phrase we're playing, a lot of times I would just skim over it, give a big comment, and then we go back and play it over and over again. And really just practicing the wrong way to play it. I honestly learned that less was more sometimes. All right, let's rehearse phrases, but let's do it in a fun way. And let's spend the time really breaking down. All right, hold this note for me. Boom, let me hear it. All right, good. And hear it on the piano. Here, adjust to me. Really breaking down. Here's how we do it. Modeling for them to be able to see, here's exactly what I want you to do. And once I really got to a place where I broke things down more and coded the learning sequence more for them, boy, they got so much better, and I got better as a teacher. Quite honestly, I picked music that was too hard for the kids. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes we need to pick music that's going to challenge them. I think of it this way: if I'm doing 3 pieces on a concert, I want one that is going to push them and challenge them a little bit, not insanely, but just enough. One that's kind of right at their ability level, and one that is really beneath their ability level and easy, and we can shape it and make it musical and beautiful, and it's just fun to play. But I picked some real doozies in my first year teaching, and we barely kind of squeaked by at contests when we did play at our adjudication, and the orchestras were just a lot rougher than they needed to be because I picked music that was too hard. And I thought, well, they should be able to do this. I was thinking the orchestra in my head rather than the orchestra in reality. And I finally realized that, okay, the reality is that I need to pick music that's fun for them and that's achievable, where they're gonna sound great. I want to always give them an opportunity to sound their best. Still challenge them, but not challenge them in a way that is just completely overwhelming. I struggle to hear the reality of my orchestra sometimes. I would hear the orchestra in my head that I wanted to hear rather than the real orchestra sitting in front of me. And our brain has this way of kind of wanting to make things right and trying to work out difficult problems, right, and make sense of them. And so when I would look at a score, say I'm teaching Dragon Hunter by Richard Meyer, I'm teaching that piece, and boy, it sure seems like they're playing E, E, D, E, E, D, but are they really playing it that together? Is it together? Is it in tune? Is it forte like it's indicated in the music? Are we really playing piano later in the piano section? That's pizzicato and the softer sections with the bow. Or is it really the orchestra that's in front of me? Or is it my own delusion of what the orchestra is? What made all the difference for me is recording my groups and recording my teaching to go, oh, I do that, I said that, oh, I missed that. We can't possibly hear everything in rehearsal sometimes or in class. So recording ourselves, I do it constantly so that I actually can make those adjustments and go, oh, that's reality. And I have an archive of my teaching going all the way back to the very beginning. It's hard to listen to sometimes, but it's important. My standard just wasn't high enough on a few different levels as a beginning teacher. What I really mean is, in terms of the ensemble expectations, I don't know, I think my opinion had been tainted a little bit, like, oh, you're gonna teach public school and oh, they're kids, ooh, middle school kids. Ugh. I love middle school kids. They're awesome. I love high school kids. Now I currently teach high school, but I also teach middle school on a regular basis too and hang with our middle school directors. And I taught middle school for many, many, many years, just middle school exclusively. Our standard is everything. We create our own reality and we shouldn't settle. Kids deserve our best. They deserve the best experience and us believing that they can be the very best possible. And that we're going to aim for perfection, but we're going to accept excellence. And I was comparing myself more to, oh, what's the local program doing? And here are all the excuses why we can't, and this reason, and this challenge. And when in reality, I finally discovered, oh, I need to look on the national and international level. What are the tippy top programs in the country? What are the tippy top programs in the world? What do I need to be doing better in my program to be more like that? I want to emulate that. I want to emulate that director and the way that they create that type of energy and passion and drive in their classroom and sense of fun and love. Because it's not easy. Teaching is a science, but it's also an art. And it's that art part that we can learn so much from watching other teachers, and certainly the science too. I learned that I had to have higher standards just in general. And for myself, that no, I'm going to be better the next day when I come in, and I'm not going to poo-poo myself and go, oh, I'm never going to get it, I'm just terrible. No, I'm going to pick myself back up. I'm not going to let myself get beaten down, and I'm going to be better the next day. If you're a beginning teacher, hang in there. It's tough work being a teacher. It's not as easy as it looks, and I'm sure you've discovered that. And if you're a veteran teacher, thank you so much for being a teacher, regardless of how many years you have under your belt. Thank you for teaching kids. It's not easy. And if it were easy, everyone would do this. And the reality is that kids need us now more than ever as teachers. And we have an opportunity to do amazing things and to inspire kids and to encourage them to pursue their dreams and help them realize this unlimited potential, and using music as a vehicle to do that. What better gift? What better gift? What better job? Oh my gosh. So hang in there. If you're in a tough spot right now, you'll get through it. We've all been there, my goodness, and I'm constantly learning, and I constantly fall flat on my face sometimes, literally and figuratively. So wherever you are in the process, it's okay. We're always seeking to get better and to grow. It's a growth mindset. Feel free to reach out to me at joelpowellconductor.com. I have lots of resources available there, and again, be sure to subscribe to this channel as well. Being a teacher isn't easy, once again, but it's a calling, and thank you for hearing that calling, and hang in there and keep doing your part to inspire kids, because it's the greatest profession in the world. It really, really is. All the best to you.